Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is November 3rd. On this day in 1979, what was meant to be a political march in Greensboro, North Carolina, turned into an on-camera massacre. Members of the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazi Party confronted anti-Klan demonstrators from the Communist Workers' Party, and in less than 2 minutes, gunfire killed 5 people and wounded nearly a dozen others. It was a moment that was caught almost entirely on film, and it would haunt the city for decades. Today, we're talking about the Greensboro Massacre. Let's get started. The demonstration had been planned weeks ahead of time. Members of the Workers' Viewpoint organization, soon to rename itself the Communist Workers' Party, had applied for a parade permit on October 19, 1979. Police Captain Larry Gibson approved it, but added conditions that he later admitted were unprecedented. No weapons, and even restrictions on how long the sticks on protest signs could be. The march was supposed to start at Morningside Homes, a public housing complex, around noon. But flyers and local news reports listed the Windsor Community Center as the starting point an hour earlier. That mix-up over time and location, documented in police meeting notes, meant that even officers weren't sure exactly where or when to post up. One man who did know? Eddie Dawson, a Greensboro police informant and an active Klansman. 2 days before the rally, he walked into police headquarters, got a copy of the parade permit, and shared it with the Klan, complete with the route, start time, and even the no weapons rule. At the same time, the ATF already had an undercover agent, Bernard Butkovich, inside the American Nazi Party. Both sides were under watch, yet when the day came, the police presence at the march's starting point was almost non-existent. The atmosphere was already combustible. Earlier that year, tensions between the far right and left had flared in nearby Winston-Salem and China Grove. Flyers for the November 3rd march carried the slogan, "Death to the Klan." And the city had approved a route that began in the heart of a predominantly black neighborhood, a community that was now placed squarely in harm's way. On paper, it was a permitted political protest, but beneath the surface, the city had all of the ingredients for an explosion. Late that morning, cameras from 4 local TV stations set up at the corner of Everett and Carver Streets. Just before noon, a caravan of cars and trucks carrying Klansmen and members of the American Nazi Party drove slowly past the waiting marchers. Video footage shows shouting from both sides. Some protesters struck the cars with their wooden picket signs. Then, several men jumped out of their vehicles, opened their trunks, and pulled out shotguns and rifles. In an instant, the sound of gunfire filled the air. Those 88 seconds, caught on multiple cameras, became the backbone of PBS's later documentary, 88 Seconds in Greensboro. People ran for cover between parked cars and apartment buildings as bullets ripped through the crowd. Police weren't there when the shooting started. And when the gunfire finally stopped, 5 people had been shot dead and others lay wounded on the ground. 4 victims died where they fell. A 5th, Dr. Michael Nathan, died 2 days later at Moses Cone Hospital, according to the Washington Post. The others killed were Cesar Cauce, James Waller, Bill Sampson, and Sandy Smith, all of whom had been active in the Communist Workers' Party and local labor and community movements. Police quickly made arrests. The Greensboro Daily News reported that 14 Klansmen and Nazis were booked on murder charges that weekend, while demonstrator Nelson Johnson and another activist were charged with inciting a riot. Within hours, the footage of the shootings aired nationwide. the FBI opened a federal investigation alongside state authorities. But almost immediately, the question started. Why had the police not been at the start of the march? How did the caravan know exactly where the march would be? And who exactly fired first? Those questions would define the next decade of public trials and inquiry. A week later, the city held a funeral march for the victims. Authorities declared a state of emergency and deployed hundreds of National Guard troops, state police, and armored vehicles to line the route. What had begun as a protest ended as a heavily guarded procession of grief. In 1980, North Carolina prosecutors tried 6 members of the Ku Klux Klan and American Nazi Party for first-degree murder and riot. The trial lasted 5 months, with 132 witnesses, including FBI experts who analyzed the gunfire. After 7 days of deliberation, an all-white jury acquitted all of the defendants, accepting their claim of self-defense. 4 years later, in 1984, federal prosecutors tried again under civil rights statutes, accusing the same defendants of violating demonstrators' constitutional rights. Again, an all-white jury acquitted them, ruling that the violence was politically, not racially motivated. But one final legal chapter followed. In 1985, families and survivors filed a civil suit, Waller v. Butkovich, alleging that the city, its police, and the attackers conspired to violate the victims' rights. This time, a jury agreed. They found the city, 2 police officers, a police informant, and several Klan and Nazi members liable, awarding over $350,000 in damages to the family of Dr. Nathan and others who were injured. The city of Greensboro paid the judgment. By the mid-1980s, 2 criminal juries had acquitted the killers, but a civil jury concluded that law enforcement and white supremacists together had failed to protect citizens and bore responsibility for the bloodshed. For decades, Greensboro struggled with how to remember November 3rd. In 2004, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, modeled on South Africa's, re-examined the case. It confirmed what survivors had said for years, that the police knew violence was likely, yet they weren't there when they were needed. In 2015, a state historical marker was placed near the site of the shooting, and in 2020, the Greensboro City Council issued a formal apology, acknowledging the police department's failures and the pain that the community endured. The Greensboro Massacre wasn't just an act of violence. It was a test of how a city faces its own truth. The footage still exists, and so do the questions about how much could have been prevented. 5 lives were lost in 88 seconds, and what happened that day rippled through Greensboro for generations. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found today's episode compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe, and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!